For right now, here at home, the White House and Democrats are in full court defense after a Wall Street Journal piece began casting some doubt on President Biden's mental acuity and fitness to serve. The headline behind closed doors: our 81-year-old commander-in-chief, quote, shows signs of slipping. Just shy of 5 months until Election Day, and skepticism is growing mightily among voters. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. The Journal conducted more than 45 interviews, bipartisan, both Republican and Democratic lawmakers were part of that, as well as current administration staffers. The White House and Democrats pushed back hard since the story has broken. Now, remember, we covered this yesterday as the piece was hitting. Now, 24 hours later, they have a lot of names for it. They call it a hit piece, politically motivated. And on the left, they say it came from, quote, MAGA Republicans. The Wall Street Journal interviewed a bipartisan group of 45 lawmakers and members of Biden's own administration. Read the article for yourself in the Wall Street Journal. Don't let the left dictate what they want you to know. You know I won't. A former Biden staffer calls that faux outraged. And he is asking, why didn't any of the big names who spend time with the president go on the record to defend their boss in the first place? Well, one of the reporters who wrote the story addressed the criticism that most of the sources, in fact, were Republicans. Watch.
So it's fair. That is very, very tricky terrain. But we focused on 3 meetings in particular all over the course of the past year. And there were things like mumbling, speaking in such a low voice that people could only hear every other word or couldn't understand what he was saying. This over-reliance on note cards, using note cards to make what were very obvious points, having a loose command of the details. This aims to find out, well, what is the president like behind closed doors? It's what's happening there, different from what the public sees. And the answer is not very much.
Multiple stories and incidents in recent days have drawn even more attention to the topic. Attorney General Merrick Garland was asked about filler words and repeat words that were removed from the special report Robert Hur's Biden interview transcript. We still don't have that audio, of course, and that would tell us so much more. Like, well, what did they take out? And what were the meanings of the things that they were taking out? Too long of a pause, an and an ah. Sometimes it can give you the context around the facts or the lack thereof. Time Magazine's fact-checked, in fact, on their interview with Biden, corrected several of his statements. And this moment of apparent confusion after Biden's border announcement.
Politics with the war.
We're not always sure what the president hears and what he doesn't hear and what some of those stares mean. And we don't know. We don't have the secret decoder ring of those moments. Former White House doctor and Texas Congressman Ronnie Jackson calls it a national security issue. Former President Trump said this.
We have a man that shouldn't be doing this job. He's not qualified. He's not mentally sharp enough. And I don't believe he was 20 years ago either.
The New York Post editorial board had a scorching headline: President Biden's senility freaks out D.C. just as much as it does everyone else. You see it there on your screen. Dr. Marc Siegel, Fox News contributor and professor of medicine at NYU's Langone Medical Center. Doctor, you always remind me that while you are an expert, you are not this particular president's doctor, but you have been studying. And what are you seeing, and what can you share with us from a medical perspective?
Well, Harris, first of all, great to be with you. I don't consider this about age. I want everyone out there to know, once you start calling it about age, people push back and they say, well, we know someone very old running a company. My father's 100, by the way, celebrating D-Day.
God bless him.
And he's talking to me about D-Day at 100, totally with it. He wasn't there in Normandy, but he humbly says, I served, and that's what mattered. The greatest and most proud day in American history, D-Day today, 80 years ago. But the point is, my father's with it at 100. But here's the thing. He's not running for president or re-election for president. And so we have to have this under scrutiny because this is the toughest job in the world, being president. And the first thing you see if somebody has slippage is that they wax and wane. So we don't need a lineup of Democrats on good days saying he's great today, and we don't need a lineup of Republicans on bad days saying he's bad today. And I think the Wall Street Journal article was very fair because it did look at both sides. I know the Journal well, and even if they didn't put as many Democrats down but for quotes, it's because Democrats don't want to lose their job, do they? So the question here is this, okay? He has periods of disorientation. That's clear. He has periods where he's talking about the president of France, but he's got Francois Mitterrand on there, and that's a memory issue. There's issues of irritability and behavioral changes. That's obvious to everyone that he didn't have years ago, that select reporters get chosen to talk to him. I have a question, you know, and spatial disorientation, by the way, when he was meeting with the president of Brazil, he couldn't remember how to get off the stage, and the other day, mixing up Putin and Xi and the issue of the border, his remarks getting confused. This is waxing and waning. But I have a question. If he disagrees with this, and by the way, one more point. If you are losing it and you do have mild cognitive impairment, you are actually the last one to know, Harris. So here's my question. Where's his MRI? Where's his neuropsychiatric testing done over time? Shouldn't he, at 81, if he's running for re-election, want to prove that I'm wrong? I'm not making a diagnosis on him. I'm concerned, like many other physicians are. What is going on here? Give me the information that proves me wrong.
Look, what I highlighted from the notes you just gave were the wax and wane. We saw even a little bit of that in Normandy today when the president was part of the opening ceremonies there for D-Day, that spatial disorientation. And people will see the video of him. He looks like he's about to take a seat in the middle of the dais where everybody else is standing. And he's told, kind of behind cover of hand next to him, what looked to be some instruction, because then he started to kind of stand up. That spatial disorientation is something that we have seen on display over and over. And that's on a list of things that you've given us to watch for today. Dr. Siegel, I also really appreciate the words you gave on your father, who's now 100 years old, and his memory of D-Day. God bless him, and God bless you and your family. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.